I need it to be very clear that I know nothing about respiratory therapy. Absolutely nada, not a word. As a matter of fact, the thought of even thinking about anything medical, hospital, doctor's office makes me queasy and I can actually pass out. So, I just need you to know that. What I do know a little bit about is good governance. Also a topic which makes a lot of people's tummies feel queasy and like they might pass out. So I think we're kind of on equal footing. You know lots about respiratory therapy, and I know a little bit, or well, quite a bit actually, about governance. And so today we're here to talk about how those two shall meet, and particularly about the difference between Marrt as a regulatory body and Marrt as a membership association. There's a fair bit of confusion, I think, out there, particularly when your name actually has association in it, as to what the difference is. So I've been asked by the board to come and talk to you about that today and to clear up some of that confusion for you. So I'd just like to start with a little bit of a discussion about the difference between a professional regulatory organization and a professional or membership-based organization. Professional associations, represent the interests of their membership, which is very different from a professional regulatory organization. They've been delegated the authority to govern their profession by the provincial government. And they have to work within a regulatory framework that is created by that government, and they have authority to do a number of things, actually on behalf of the government and in the public interest. So the role of a membership association, again, is to promote and advocate for the professional and personal interests of its members. And the regulatory organization is responsible for regulating its members in the interests of protecting the public under the authority of the Regulated Health Professions Act. So where are you at? Notwithstanding that Marrt's name indicates it's an association, respiratory therapy is a regulated profession under the current Respiratory Therapist Act. You are currently preparing to transition to the Regulated Health Professions Act. I'm pretty sure you all know about that, the RHPA, which imposes the same standards on all regulated health professions in the province of Manitoba. So you will be in company with all of the other regulated professions under this act. The Regulated Health Professions Act, the RHPA, was proclaimed into force on January 1st of this year with the College of Audiologists and Speech Language Pathologists of Manitoba being the first regulatory college to be established under the legislation. That doesn't mean that there weren't other colleges in Manitoba already. It's just that this was the first to be established under the new legislation. And as you know, it's a kind of a staged, or not everybody's going under the act all at once. The Regulated Health Professions Act will eventually replace the current 22 regulated health professions in Manitoba, including the act that you currently operate under. Each profession will also have its own specific, profession-specific regulations under the RHPA related to reserved acts. And this is where I get a little fuzzy, because those things I think have to do with medical stuff and interventions and, well, sorry, not my thing. This legislation ensures that all professions in Manitoba are governed by consistent, uniform legislation and regulations with a focus on public safety. And I'm afraid you're going to hear me say this over and over and over again today. The focus is on protecting the public. The focus is public safety. That is what the Regulated Health Professions Act is all about. Under the RHPA, Marrt will officially become a college. Okay, and whether or not your name changes immediately, you will become known as a college, and the role of a college is really clearly defined in the Act, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So what is professional regulation? Professional regulation refers to all legitimate and appropriate means, governmental, professional, and private, whereby order, consistency, identity, and control are brought to the profession. The profession and its members are defined, the scope of practice is determined, standards of education and of ethical and competent practice are set, and systems of accountability are established through these means. For health professions in Manitoba, This is a self-regulated or profession-led process, like it will be for Marrt, or is currently actually. It'll just be a tiny bit different under the RHPA. Regulatory bodies carry out their mandates in many ways, and we'll discuss that a little later on. But I just want to point out to you that self-regulation is a huge honor. There are not many professions in the world that get to regulate themselves, and so the medical professions in Manitoba who are able to self-regulate recognize that as a great honor and a great matter of public trust and responsibility. When the public interest is at stake, and safety, when that's at stake, your governance processes have to be really clear, transparent, and not muddied by the personal and occupational interests of the members. So this is where the difference comes between being a regulatory body and a membership association. We have to keep our governance processes very clear so that it's clear that we are focused on protecting the public interests. The regulated professional pays fees not to expect benefits of membership like many other membership associations do, but to be registered and licensed as a competent professional health practitioner. The registration and license is a clear indication to the public, employers, and other healthcare professionals that respiratory therapists are well trained, understand the standards of practice, and are subject to a code of ethics. So what does that RHPA impose upon us as a regulatory body? Some of the current regulatory bodies, such as Marrt, are known as associations. Under the RHPA, all regulatory bodies will be known as colleges. So that's the first major change. You will become a college as opposed to an association. This will allow the public to identify the regulatory body from the professional interest association. So you can prepare for the very real happening of your name changing a little bit. The overriding duty of all colleges is to serve and protect the public interest, as we said, and you must carry out all your mandates, duties, and powers and govern your members in a way that does just that, protects the interest of the public. In the RHPA, there are 10 items that are mandated for a college to do. We're going to look at 4. We're going to talk briefly about 4 of them, but all of them are required by Marrt, and your board is starting to prepare for how they're going to do that. But the main ones are governing members in accordance to the Act, so knowing what the Act says about how you can act, how you can carry out your mandate is important. Developing, establishing, and maintaining standards and qualifications for registration and monitoring compliance with and enforcing those standards. So that's kind of the biggie, okay? That's the one that takes the most time and the most effort. So establishing and maintaining the standards and making sure that your members are in compliance with them. The next one is developing, establishing, and maintaining a continuing competency program, which I know that you are already doing, and promoting the ability of members to respond to changes in practice environments and advances in technology. So those are kind of the big 4. There are other ones as well, but those are the big 4 that you need to be aware of right now. In order to sort of clearly demonstrate the difference between being a college and being a membership association, I sought information from a profession that maintains both, a college and a membership association. And I went to our friends Google, or as my mom calls it, the Googler. It was pretty easy to find some samples. The one that popped up first, and so that's the one I'll talk about, is the College of Licensed Practical Nurses of BC, actually. They were very high on the search engine optimization, apparently. They have a very clear delineation of the duties of the college as related to the Association of LPNs. And they have a third column in theirs, which is nursing unions, which we won't talk about today. To meet its mandate of public protection, the College of LPNs in BC establishes, monitors, and enforces standards of practice and professional ethics, just like what you would be asked to do, enhances competent practice, and reduces incompetent practice or impaired or unethical practice, and establishes and maintains a continuing competency and quality assurance program to promote high practice standards. So right on the front page of their website, it has 2 columns. The first one is here's what our role is as a college, and the second one is here's how it differs from the role of the Association of LPNs. So the association's role is to promote and advocate for the professional and personal interests of its members. And to meet the needs of its members, it represents the profession to government, employers, and other agencies, works with other health organizations, supports the development of social programs for its members, and promotes research and studies in nursing. So you can see that there's a very clear delineation between the role of the college and the role of the association. And they put that right up front and center on their website so that the public can see that there is a very clear delineation. Marrt will be mandated as a college under the RHPA, again, to protect the public. Other ends, such as those that were stated in the LPN Association of BC, representing you to employers or to government, that kind of thing, are not in the scope of a regulatory body. That means that Marrt as a college will not be able to entertain differences with employers or advocacy to government, etc. Marrt is not responsible for that kind of thing. It falls clearly outside of its role as a regulatory body. So when we think about good governance, our minds often go to the role of a board of directors within the scope of the organization. And I want to talk a little bit about that because the RHPA is pretty clear on the role of the board of directors within an organization. The governing body of a regulated health profession will be called a council under the new Act. And its mandate is to manage and conduct the business of the college and to exercise and carry out the college's mandate, duties, and powers. Inherent in this mandate is the requirement to manage and conduct the affairs in such a way that it protects the public interest, again, that comes up, not the personal or professional interests of its members. So you can see that there's a slight shift in what the role of the board of directors is going to be. They are going to be responsible for the regulatory part of the profession as opposed to the professional interests of its members. Under the RHPA, regulatory bodies and councils are required to consult with their members on proposed regulations. They can do that through things like focus groups, surveys, advisory councils, etc. But membership approval is not required for the regulations to be brought into force. So you can expect that you will be consulted when there are things that are related to standards, but not necessarily, you're not necessarily required to approve those. Government still has the final say in establishing regulation, but intervention in the setting of standards or regulations is unlikely if your processes are clear, if the regulations are well justified, and the interests of public safety are ensured. Where there might be a problem is if we get a little bit muddy between the role of the regulatory and the professional interests association. So we need to make sure that that stays pretty clear. The effective transfer of important standard-setting powers from the government to a self-governing profession requires clear lines of accountability to government and to the public. And to that end, you will be required to maintain a website that is very clear about your role as a college and how you protect the government. Government will still be able to make, amend, or repeal regulations where it is deemed to be in the public interest. Again, if your processes are clear, your regulations are well educated and researched and justified, it's unlikely that government would intervene. The Council will recommend to members fees and increases in those fees that are required to safely and appropriately manage the mandated activities of the college under the RHPA. So when you are asked to approve membership fees, it's important to remember that there are costs related to being licensed in any profession and that it is your responsibility as a professional to ensure that the processes are adequately and appropriately resourced. If they are not, and the public interest is found to be compromised, government intervention is likely. Good process cannot be done on a dime. I know that membership fees are always a bee in people's bonnets, and they are in every profession, there's no doubt about that. But I can assure you that the people who sit on the council are RTs just like you. It affects them just like it affects you, and they're not out to gouge anybody. They're out to make sure that they can meet the regulatory requirement of government under the RHPA. So I think that you can approve the fees with confidence that the Council is not out to gouge you, but to safely and competently fulfill the mandate of a self-regulated profession. The Board of Directors, or Council as it will be known, must consist of at least 6 persons who are either members of the college or public representatives. At least 1/3 of the Council members must be a public representative appointed to the Council by the Minister. This public representation is meant to ensure that the interests of the public are represented and considered at the Council table. It's an honor for the professional members of the college, like yourselves, to elect your own representatives to that table, ensuring that professionalism and competency is maintained in your very own profession. This honor could well be withdrawn or limited by the Minister if it's abused, misused, or found not to be in the public interest. So again, how we make sure that we don't get on the wrong side of governance is to make sure that we have very clear processes in place through our bylaws and our policies, and to make sure that we all understand those as members and how to apply them. So what's Marrt's focus in preparation for transitioning to the RHPA? The RHPA actually delivers a number of tasks to the Council that must be managed in an informed way with defined processes. When we talk about an informed way, we talk about good policy, clear procedures, and very transparent means of showing that those are there and that they can be accessed both by public and by members. These tasks include not just registration and licensing, but setting of standards, tracking evidence of continuing competency, investigation of complaints, and discipline, which I know will not happen at Marrt. We won't need that. Marrt is in the throes of being properly prepared to be a college that can appropriately manage these expectations of government and public. To that end, we have to ensure that we're practicing good governance. So folks say, well, what actually is governance? And governance talks about the way we direct the affairs of the organization within the frameworks that are imposed upon us through things like legislation, bylaws, and policies. Okay. So we have to practice good governance, and a cornerstone of good governance is understanding all of the legislated requirements imposed by government, and then crafting bylaws that allow the organization to be able to deliver on those requirements. So you will be asked to, you've been asked to change some bylaws today, and those changes will be already checked to be consistent, to be sure that they're consistent with what will be required under the RHPA. So the bylaws are where you come in. It's where you have an element of control over the organization, because the bylaws can only be changed by the members of the organization at a meeting like today, at an AGM. Okay, so this is your role, is to be able to have some influence in the governance of the organization. The bylaws are able to be changed by the members on the recommendation of the Council, as long as the changes do not represent a deviation from the legislated requirements. So long as you're within the legislated requirements, you can change your bylaws. You just can't do anything that puts you outside of the legislation. Because in the hierarchy, guess what's king? Legislation, and then bylaws, then policy. So for example, your bylaws could say that the Council will be comprised of 12 members, if you like, which meets the RHPA's minimum of 6. The RHPA also says that 1/3 of those members, or 4 if you choose to have a council of 12, must be appointed by the Minister. Therefore, the membership, yourselves, would be responsible for electing the remaining 8. Another example of how you can change your bylaws and still be within the Act is that the Act says that the terms for council members must not exceed 4 years, and that a person cannot be a member for more than 12 consecutive years or 3 4-year terms. As a governance practitioner, I beg you not to burn out your people like that. It's a long time to sit on a board, as many of our current board members can attest. Marrt could reasonably determine that their terms are 3 years in length, and that a person can be a member cannot be a member for more than 2 3-year terms, whatever it is that you have in your bylaws. As long as Marrt is not in contravention of the Act, it can set many of its own rules about its council and how it will act in delivering on the mandate of the RHPA. In preparing for transition to the RHPA, Marrt will be reviewing its bylaws on an ongoing basis and potentially asking you for your input and your approval of the changes as they move through that. As you get closer to the RHPA, you really need to pay a lot more attention to your bylaws to make sure that you're not in contravention before you transition. In addition, Marrt will be focused on properly preparing itself for the regulatory processes that are being delegated to it. To that end, policies and processes around creation of standards, investigations, and discipline matters will be developed. Committees will need to be populated to ensure that the processes are appropriately carried out in the event of a complaint or disciplinary matter. And you can assist your profession by participating in a committee or allowing your name to stand for election to the council. This is a way to have an inside track on how things are progressing as an RT, and your participation is not just desired but highly encouraged. So what's in it for you as an RT? For an RT, the license in good standing is the central benefit of being a member of Marrt. In fact, if you fall behind in your licensing requirements, you're no longer a member and you can't work in Manitoba. So knowing that you can demonstrate your competency by being registered and being subject to continuing professional development is your reward. Maybe, I'm not sure that that's reward particularly, but that is the key benefit of membership in the association, is that license, that gold-plated standard that people know that you are well trained and that you continue to develop your competency. Your membership fee is not a membership fee like in normal associations. Normally members are really vocal about what's in it for me and are really concerned about what the benefits of membership are. In a regulatory body, that's really not the point. The fee is paid to receive that gold-plated recommendation to potential employers and, even more importantly, to the public you serve. The cost of registration, licensing, and oversight is not insignificant. Marrt requires your fees to ensure that the governance processes are properly carried out, because that's what makes it possible, is having that, that ability to respond to the issues that come up under the Regulatory Act. Making yourself available to serve your profession through participation in Marrt's board of directors or council and its committees is a way to influence what happens in the profession going forward. The personal and professional satisfaction of serving the public good is something that many people recognize as they serve organizations in which they have no personal stake at all. Volunteerism is strong, it's alive in Canada, and in and of itself is very rewarding. Volunteering in the governance of your own profession can be a learning opportunity, can help you gain valuable experience in directing an organization, and it's a way to serve your community, this community, your fellow members. And to boot, volunteering's proven to be good for you. Research shows that those who volunteer have lower mortality rates, they keep the cognition going better, and they report good health more often. So if you don't need, that's not a good enough reason for you to step up to the plate and volunteer to be a board member, I don't know what is. So I encourage you to find a way to give of your time to your association. Related to the opportunity to volunteer is the need to celebrate and thank those who have served the organization in the past and those who will serve in the future. When it seems that no one appreciates the volunteer time that you offer, it's difficult to see yourself serving the next term or sitting on a committee. Please consider how important it is to have members who are willing to serve on your council and your committees. Without them, you would not have the opportunity to influence the future of your profession or to regulate your profession yourselves. That would be left to governments and bureaucrats who know little about what you do, and so that would not be the preferred means of regulating your profession. So I encourage you, step up to the plate, offer to participate, and next time you see a council or committee member, thank them for the work they do on behalf of your profession. I can assure you they'll appreciate it, because sometimes working on a council or committee is pretty thankless work. So make sure you give them a pat on the back and a thank you. Being a self-regulated profession is a gift of trust. It's a gift of trust that is given to you from the government, and with that gift comes great responsibility and ultimately great satisfaction born of knowing that the public we serve is well protected. Please take the time to understand your requirements under the RHPA and do all you can to assist your council to make Marrt, the college, to be held up as the standards for others. There's many ways that you can do that. We've talked about many of them today, and I encourage you to do that. So that's the basis of the good governance conversation, the difference between an association and a regulatory body. And while I can't answer questions about the Reserved Act, which you all know way more about than I do, I can ask or answer questions if you have any questions around governance, and I would be happy to do so. I will be staying around for a little bit. If you don't want to ask your question publicly now, I would be happy to answer your question a little bit later on after the rest of the meeting has gone forward. So, any questions? Wow. All right. Oh, sorry, yes.
So there needs to be public appointments on the council. And we spoke a little further about the committees. Does there have to be public representation on any or each of these committees?
Yes, there does. And I'm not sure what the percentage is, to be honest, but there does have to be at least, I believe it's at least one public member on each committee as well. And that, again, for the same reason, to bring that public perspective to a committee.
A question?
Sure, go for it.
So question is on funds that up until now that Marrt has had aside, and a lot of those funds have been brought forward to be allocated for any legal liability funds. Can you expand upon that? These funds would be used for litigation by the council and it's not there to protect the actual member, or is any of those funds there to protect the members?
The funds are not to protect the members. The funds are to serve the public, to make sure that the public's interests are served. So yeah, any litigation would be related to making sure that that happens. So, am I correct on that? I just want to make sure, Tracy. That's okay. Right, that's not the role of, that would be one of those professional interest kinds of things, and that would not be the role of the council. The council is not here to protect your personal or professional interests. They're here to protect the interests of the public. Yes?
I just wanted to sort of make it clear too that up until the new act comes into effect, we are still under the regulated Respiratory Act, and a lot of these processes are already in place.
That's true.
What we're working towards is making sure that they are still efficient and correct for the
Correct, yes. Just so for those of you that couldn't hear. Yeah, just for those of you that couldn't hear. It's not that you have not been regulated up till now. It's that there are some new onuses put on you, if you like, under the new act that you are going to transition to. So you have been a regulatory body. You have had that, that luxury up till now. It's just that with the new act, there is quite a few more pieces that you will have to put in place in terms of making sure that your processes are clear and that your policies are very transparent. And so that's what your council or what your board is going to be working on now. Yes?
And this question is probably to the board then, but the NART is going to be a regulatory body and then there's going to be an association. Has there been progress or work towards the association part of this new process?
I can defer to the board on this if you like, although I can make a comment, and that would be that if Marrt is the college, it is not their role to establish an association. So I don't know if there's been work done on that by some other group. No, okay. Your chair is saying no, there's been no work done in that regard.
I'll just respond a bit, Brian. Just to answer that, I think that's why the CSRT exists. They're our advocacy body. They're a professional advocacy. That's their job. So if Manitoba has a college and they regulate our practice in the interest of public safety, then if you're looking for professional advocacy, that's when you go to the CSRT. That's the Canadian Society of Law.
Right. So just so if you couldn't hear, the Canadian Society of Respiratory Therapists is the advocacy body for you, the membership-based association. Yes, again.
The reason I asked that question is because the way NART is currently, it is both. So I was wondering if they were also looking at the alternate side of it.
I can answer a bit to that. in that this past year we have reestablished or reorganized the PR committee and sort of put that more as an advocacy avenue for the members with regards to professional development and membership. And I know I come from other provinces where there are small memberships of 300, and because of that, the college and the association are one. They're not separate, and so in order to keep your hats kind of separate, you have to have a committee that's kind of at arm's length away from the regulatory body. So I don't know if that will continue under the new Health Act or not, but that is what we're doing as president, to kind of keep it a little bit at arm's length until we get a little bit of representation.
Yeah, that answers my question, because I was concerned, wondering if we now have to establish another group, the Association of Respiratory Therapists for Medical, or something like that.
Well, the requirement under the Act is that you must clearly demonstrate to the public that you are a college with responsibilities under the RHPA, not a membership association. That's a requirement under the Act. So it could be a little bit difficult to do that. Shane, you have there's a comment here, sorry, and then Shane.
I just want to say that that's sort of, we haven't got to that point yet, but I think, points well taken. I think the government will want a clear definition, or a definition of those two roles. And so we're kind of letting you know that that will be clearer than it has been in the past. And it may come down to a point where the RTs in the province will have to establish their own association for their own promotion, and Marrt will have a clear, singular regulatory role. But right now, we still have dual role, and in the past, the government has had some latitude with smaller professions, allowing them to have a dual role. But that being said, a very well-defined, separated, we wouldn't be able to have members that are part of the regulatory board or on regulatory committees, on committees that are associated with the association. They have to be separate membership or representation, I should say.
Thank you.
So I was going to echo what Todd said, Brian. In other provinces that have undergone omnibus legislation, the smaller professions have been allowed to maintain both, in a sense, because you got reduced overhead, right? You don't have to create two offices, two sets of office staff, etc. So that's what we've been led to believe is a very good possibility about being able to, but that's as far as it's gone.
I have to tell you that in preparation for this, I read the RHPA about 100 times, just so you know, and I didn't find any indication that that was not going to be allowed or that it was going to be allowed. There was no definitive mention of how it would be in the Act or under the Act, except to say that the public must know clearly that you are a regulatory body and that you would not be distracted, if you like, by the needs of your members. So that's what the Act clearly says. How that plays out will be interesting. I'm not sure how it played out for the speech language pathologist people, because they're about the same size as you, I think. So I could try and find out. Other questions? Hearing none, I will be around for a little bit, not probably for the whole entirety of your meeting, but I will be around for a bit. If you have any questions or concerns, do come and chat with me. Once again, I want to thank you for the real honor of being here and having the ability to talk to you this afternoon. Thank you to Tracy and Corey and all the rest of the board for asking me here, and I look forward to seeing great things for Marrt as a college under the regulations. Thank you very much.